So you hear about a major tournament changing its schedule, and you might think, okay, big deal. But this is way more than just some dates on a calendar. We're talking about a story that digs deep into power, money, history, and a whole continent's fight to reclaim its own game. And it all kicked off with a single bombshell announcement.
All right, let's set the scene. The date is December 20th, 2025. You're in Rabat, Morocco. The president of the Confederation of African Football, that's CAF, walks up to a microphone. And what he's about to say, well, it's going to change the face of African football forever.
And he's not talking about just any tournament. He's talking about the Africa Cup of Nations, AFCON. I mean, for players, for coaches, for hundreds of millions of fans across the continent and the world, this is everything. It is the most important football event in Africa. It's been this vibrant, incredible tradition held every 2 years for almost 60 years. You know, it's a rhythm that's just baked right into the culture of the sport. Well, that rhythm, it's about to be completely shattered. The big announcement is that starting in 2028, AFCON isn't going to be every 2 years anymore. It's moving to every 4 years, doubling the time. And let me tell you, the backlash was immediate. It was instant. Right away, people inside African football started connecting the dots. It didn't take long. The coach of Egypt, Hossam Hassan, he just came right out and said it. He said, "This is designed for African players based in Europe whose clubs don't want to release them." The message couldn't be clearer. A lot of people saw this not as a decision for African football, but as a total cave-in to European clubs. So to really get why people were so upset, you have to look at the pressure that was building up for years. I mean, this decision didn't just pop up out of thin air. No, it was the climax of a long, long campaign of pressure from Europe's richest and most powerful clubs. And what were they complaining about? Well, here's the list. They absolutely hate losing their African superstars. You know, guys like Mo Salah at Liverpool or Ashraf Hakimi at PSG, right in the middle of a crucial part of their season. They say it completely disrupts their title races, it weakens their squads, and it puts their multi-million-dollar players at risk of getting injured. And for what? For compensation from CAF that they see as basically pocket change. And you know, we actually got a little preview of this whole power struggle just before the 2025 AFCON. FIFA, kind of stuck in the middle, ended up siding with the clubs, and they shortened the player release window by a whole week. Over in Europe, club officials were celebrating it as a major win. But back in Africa, the coaches were calling it catastrophic and a blatant sign of disrespect. So you can see the battle lines were already clearly drawn. And this is a pattern you just can't ignore, right? When the needs of African football go head-to-head with the wants of European clubs, it feels like African football always ends up on the losing side. So the big question is, why? Why does this keep happening? To get that answer, we've got to dig way deeper than just a tournament schedule. Yeah, the roots of this whole power dynamic, they go back more than 100 years. If you really want to understand why a decision made in 2025 feels so heavy with history, you have to look back at the echoes of a colonial past that are still shaping the beautiful game today. Okay, so this timeline really tells the story. In the 1800s, football arrives in Africa, brought by European colonizers. But then, fast forward to 1957, the Confederation of African Football, CAF, is formed. This was a huge step towards autonomy. Then, in 1968, they established AFCON as a tournament every 2 years, a massive symbol of identity and independence. And now, 2025, that historic, symbolic cycle is broken. And that really gets to the heart of the matter. Just because you have independence in name doesn't always mean you have it in practice. The old colonial powers might be gone, but those structures, those hierarchies of who has the power and who doesn't, they're still there. The fight for real independence in football, just like in everything else, is still very much ongoing. So, okay, how does this old imbalance actually play out today? Well, there are basically 4 key ways that European football's influence continues to dominate. Yeah, it's pretty complex. First off, you've got this massive player migration. It's like a brain drain of all the best talent heading straight for the richer European leagues. Then you have the big European clubs setting up their own academies right there in Africa, which basically creates a direct pipeline to ship the best young players up to Europe. Add to that the fact that millions of African fans are huge supporters of European teams. And get this, even CAF's own tournaments are now sponsored by groups like the European Union, so the financial ties are incredibly deep. And look, you don't even have to guess why they changed the AFCF gun schedule. The CAF president, Patrice Motsepe, said it out loud. He said the whole point was to ease tensions with European clubs about getting players released. I mean, that's about as open an admission as you can get, that this was all done to make Europe happy.
So at the end of the day, we're not just talking about moving a tournament around on the calendar. This is a massive moment. It's forcing African football to stand at a crossroads and ask itself some really tough questions about its identity, its freedom, and what its future is even going to look like.
Because you have to understand, AFCON is so much more than just a tournament. It's a continent-wide party. It's about cultural identity. It's the #1 showcase for amazing African talent. It's a symbol of unity and a source of just incredible pride. So when you make it happen less often, you're not just changing a schedule. You're chipping away at something culturally vital. And for the critics, man, the message this sends is crystal clear. It just reinforces this old hierarchy, right? The idea that European football calendars are the ones that matter, and Africa's biggest competition has to fit in around them. It basically says that African football is just a feeder league, a development system for the real game in Europe.
So this moment really has put African football at a true crossroads. There are two very different roads ahead. One road is to integrate even more deeply with the European system. And the other is to resist.
And the choice between them, it's not easy. The trade-offs are huge. Path number 1, integration, means you give in to what Europe wants. And maybe you get more financial stability out of it. Maybe your players get treated a bit better by their clubs. But the cost is obvious. You're giving up your autonomy. Path number 2, resistance, is all about asserting your independence, building your own self-sustaining football world. It's definitely riskier, it's harder, and you're not going to make as much money right away. But it offers something the other path might not: control over your own destiny.
So where does all this leave us? Well, the decision's been made for now, but the firestorm it's created is far from over. It really all boils down to one single fundamental question that everyone involved in African football, from the top execs to the fans in the stands, has to ask themselves.
What kind of football do they want? A football that bends over backwards to accommodate Europe? Or a football that stands up and asserts its own African identity? Is it going to be a football that keeps playing by old rules with roots in a colonial past, or one that's brave enough to forge a new, truly independent future? The very soul of the game, on a continent with over 1 billion people, is hanging in the balance.